Enterprise analyst Dr. Sam Amadi joins us now to discuss in what possible ways Dr. Okupe's conviction and his gesture of stepping aside from playing a central role in the Labour Party campaigns can affect presidential standard-bearer Peter Obi's chances in the February 25, 2023 presidential election. Good to have you here again with us on Newsday.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Well, Dr. Amadi, let me first of all start with Dr. Okupe's resignation from the Labour Party's campaign council over what he termed personal travails. That's quite unusual in Nigerian politics, isn't it? What do you make of that?
Well, there are two perspectives to that. The first is to see it as heroic. You're right. We never resign, even when the issues are weightier and the facts are clear. In this case, this is not really a matter of corruption as much as a matter of offending the law, a strict liability criminal offense, not handling cash beyond approved threshold, which is common, and that's why the federal government has responded by banning public withdrawal of cash from public accounts. So clearly, it's like the judge says, he's a victim of circumstances, but it's still a criminal indictment and conviction. And so his response by withdrawing from the campaign, some would see it as expected, the likely thing to do, but it is still weighty in the context of Nigerian politics and the lack of responsiveness to public opinion and sentiments of credibility or lack of it. So in that sense, it's a bit historic in that we've not seen that happen. Many of the people who are running other campaigns have very questionable ethical or even criminal issues. Some of them are even facing trial for real indictment on corruption with prima facie facts to support it, but they don't give a hoot about it. So that's a big deal. Some people say, well, not really a big deal. Look, he ought to do this. But I think by what he has done so far, he seemed to try to redeem the ticket from the slur that we've seen in the last couple of days arising from this interdiction and conviction.
And you did mention that other parties have individuals that might be facing similar, even worse charges to their own account. Do you think that this dents the credibility of the Labour Party in any way, or does it help? What do you think the perception of this entire situation does it help, or does it worsen the help for the Labour Party?
I think the first day this broke out, there was this sense of, yeah, we've got him. You know, Peter Obi's campaign largely on the basis of freshness. You know, this is a guy who says, I didn't do this, I didn't even receive the customary pension that everybody receives. I mean, that's remarkable. If a governor in Nigeria has not received a penny as pension, if a governor of Nigeria, a former governor of Nigeria could claim he never got a land, got anything from the state, never employed his family, never in any way embezzled any amount of money, and now the leader of his campaign, the face of it, if you like, from day one, is now convicted for what on the face of it seemed like a case of corruption, because initially it was money laundering, which is a case of corruption. So at that first day, it was really bad in the sense that people were saying, look, this is a guy who is clean, you know, and he cavorts with people who are criminals. It's a case by somebody of the novel by Aye Amakwa, who talks about Chichidodo, the bird that is clean, but it's faggots. So essentially it was tarnishing. But as people now, the facts emerge that this is not really a conventional criminal case of corruption, but a case of strict liability, just like a traffic offense. You did it, you are out, whether you intend it, whether it's for bad or good motive, like the judge said. Then that slur began to wash away. It didn't get traction. So Peter Obi did not suffer any major moral disability or burden in those 2-3 days, because people saw through quickly that this is not a case of classical case of corruption. Again, Obi's obedience tried to also put a wedge between Peter Obi and Doyin Okupe. Now that Doyin has stepped down, Peter has accepted, it kind of relaunch them back to their moral high ground. So they can say two things. First, that this is not a conventional case of court. This is a pattern, a practice that Nigerians go through, but it's against the law, and this guy's been convicted. He accepts it. Now, he has even gone further to recuse himself from this campaign. In a way, they can now have the bragging right that they did what others wouldn't do, to owe up and say, no, and by the way, though Okupe accepted, he didn't try to say, I didn't do this, but he's going to court appeal to challenge the fact that it applies not him as a person, but the office as special assistant to the president. So in a way, in the last 2 days, they have been able to dodge a major bullet, and by stepping down, they have kind of used leverage on this crisis to rebuild their credibility, to say, now we've done this. You guys on the other platform, can you now step aside? Those who are accused, those who have been convicted of several things, can you now step aside to show good faith like we have shown? So I think they came from near death to a resurrection, and now to even buoyancy by virtue of that step down.
So what kind of individual would you expect the Labour Party to pick as Doyin Okupe's replacement? Of course, we've been hearing some names, maybe Akin Oshutokun, David Balami, who has dismissed the rumor. But what kind of individual do you think can fill Doyin Okupe's shoes?
Clearly, geopolitics, somebody who is not from the southeast, in most cases, best case from the north, but good enough southwest, so they can have some competition at that level. Again, a person like Ake, who has no documented public issues around credibility, issues around corruption. No, he also has great respect in terms as a public intellectual, as a writer. He has held out. He has been able to show himself strong. And of course, someone who has been part of politics would have knowledge about the dynamics and the everyday peak of politics. I think he's that kind of person. Again, somebody like Baba Shia, who also have been mentioned, but of course he was indicted, but he got discharged and acquitted. Maybe that counsels the idea of corruption and grass cutter scandal, but again, he will have great traction as a strong politician, especially in the conventional middle belt and northeast, where he could be more effective to help Obi become competitive in northeast, and of course help to gain some support from the previous APC people who are not happy. That's also a possible strong candidate. But on the whole, I think the checklist should be somebody who will kind of align with this sentiment of a new Nigeria, somebody who can get the support and respect of the youth and other platforms driving the big campaign, and somebody who has some great skills in managing the campaign. This is the last 2 months of the campaign. Much of the work is no longer rhetoric. I mean, the symbolisms are strong, but the real work now will be to put a team that will do the last push, and a team that will be able to protect the votes when they do come in, a team that will be strong on the day of counting, and a team that will be strong and visible on the day of announcement of results. So right now, this is a mop-up time. You want grand level operations. You want persons who have organizational skills and presence and some tenacity and muscle as well to see through a grand operation that will be very critical run up to the election.
As we know, the clock is also ticking. It's less than 2 months before kickoff. But I want to delve more into the charges against Doyin Okupe, the Money Laundering Act, specifically Section 16, subsections 1 and 2. He was found guilty of violating these, carrying money or being given money in the excess of 5 million naira at a time. Well, in this current economic situation we find ourselves in, I'm sure that there will be more individuals who might fall wrong of this particular act. Do you foresee more individuals being charged with these crimes, especially politicians, as we lead up to the elections? Or was this something you saw as targeted specifically for the Labour Party?
Yeah, well, not Labour Party. It's targeted because let's not forget the history. This is one of those several cases against Jonathan as officials of the Jonathan administration, of course. This is the first time Nigeria has a new government, a party in power, defeated by the opposition party. Right now, relationship has calmed down, temper has calmed down, and we now have better relationship between the president, sitting president, and the ex-president. But at the beginning, it was a hostile takeover, and that carried the risk of raiding these guys, of finding out everything. So for the first time in Nigerian history, we saw the mode of financing election become an issue for legal trial. Throughout the PDP 60 years, we know that you fund elections through public fund, which is immoral, unethical, but that's the pattern. And the APC did that also in 2015, 2019, when they recontested and won. But the point is that these charges came out of that particular incident, that particular moment when they are probing how PDP fought campaign finance election, and Dasuki loot became part of that. So every money that was paid to anybody, as from Dasuki, the NSA office, to either for campaign purposes or for running the government. In this case, he was paid for running his office, and those funds were approved by the president. Just like former public secretary of the PDP, Olisa Meto, who also got money from the president, approved by the president, but also indicted for corruption. Of course, he got out of it. So it's not targeted at labor. This was part of that operation to deal with PDP. But unfortunately, I mean, that's the irony. The PDP people are scorning and making fun of doing at this point. But this came out of a hostile takeover by the APC government. Will it happen again? I don't think. I think right now this government is not focused, the president himself and his team, on humiliating or somehow openly heckling and tackling and bringing down the campaign. So I don't see any of the chieftains being taken to court for receiving 5 million at a time. But going forward, the lesson will be that everybody will be careful that, look, it's not just about embezzling funds or corrupt enrichment. You could be criminalized for technical failure to obey any of the anti-laundering laws. And again, this is important. Because of the high rate of corruption in the public sector, we are seeing a lot of policies, the design, limitation on how much you can carry cash. All these are tailored towards providing traction. So we can track public movement of funds, and that will help in fighting corruption. I think maybe at this point in our development, these laws are important. Many are going to fall victim to the rules going forward, but I don't see government going back to say, oh, who did what, because even the ruling party and these chieftains are moving cash, and they know, and that's why the federal government this morning said, look, no more cash withdrawal from public account. This is a practice. Unfortunately, Okupe became a victim. But I don't see it being used as a way of dealing with opposition politicians in this election. But maybe going forward, it will become something to watch out for dealing with persons that we don't like and who for. But people are going to be more careful these days, and most of these transactions will go through the financial system, and that makes it easy for tracking and for possible investigation and prosecution, as the case might be.
But Dr. Amadi, while we are still looking at Peter Obi's chances in 2023, many people have said that he will find it difficult to win the election because the Labour Party does not have structures. But in Akwa Ibom, it seemed Peter Obi downplayed that by vowing that it is the present political structure that he plans, which he said has led millions of Nigerians into poverty, that he plans, to dismantle. What's your take on this play of words? How do you think it will help his campaign chances?
The truth is that you need structure to win an election. But the truth also is that we have emphasized structure in the wrong way. So when politicians typically talk about structure, they're talking about the sitting governor who is going to, on the last day, roll out cash, who's going to use the commissioner of police and the paraphernalia of security to probably harass even stop his opponents from coming out of their houses. We've seen that before in some states where the early morning military or security officials will be posted to leading opposition's homes to stop them from coming out. So structure now becomes a word for manipulation, capacity to manipulate. But structure, in the real sense of structure, is organization. And so Peter cannot downplay the importance of organization. For example, you need to have people who go, pull word to word, law government to law government, conscientizing, informing their supporters, and also letting them know this party's symbol and helping them, motivating them to really come out on the day of votes. Voting day operations include mobilizing, getting the voters out. Oftentimes in rural Nigeria, you might be the one who will go and provide vehicles, enable them to come out so that they can vote, because you know that these are your strongholds. So that is a work you require muscle, structure. So Peter cannot say that structure doesn't count. And Labour has to find a way to have the right kind of structure that is focused, aligned to ease movement. Again, different political campaigns have different strategic focus. I think that P2B's focus should be on messaging more than on structure, because look, as voters get excited and decide to vote for him, you will need to do a lot more to stop them from voting for him. And with improvement in the voting technology, with improvement in INEC's management of the process, and with greater citizen focus and greater transparency and the mainstreaming of technology, you may not have too much reliance on the old Nigerian concept of structure, where they carry buses, they carry money, and push people to go and vote for Mr. A. No, in these cases, the voters may still, in spite of the lack of structure, vote for a P2B if they are enthused by his message. So I think the big campaign would say, look, we're going to focus on our messaging, we're going to focus on the platform, youth platforms that are very active working for us, volunteers working for us, but we're going to also pay attention to some of those organizational issues that will enable these voters come out, that will enable our agent effectively monitor the election, and enable counting to happen transparently, and be able to have presence to contest any form of manipulation by the bigger parties. So clearly, in two ways. One is that structure is important in terms of organization and strategy and getting things done, effectiveness. But structure in the old Nigerian sense of the behemoth, the corrupt behemoth who uses funding, controls the police, controls INEC, and that the rights resort and intimidate everybody, is no longer a viable project. And Peter is right on that. So anybody who thinks that this election will be won because you are part of the old structure is deceiving themselves. The election will be won because you are effective in your messaging, you are strong in organization, and you are preferable and acceptable by Nigerian voters. And ultimately, you can break through many of the voting blocks, the Southeast, the South-South, the North-Central, the Northeast, Northwest, Southwest. You are able to kind of knit together a coalition of various interests that supports your message. If you do that, you are heading to victory. You don't need the old structure of hiring police, hiring military, bribing INEC officials, and then having these talks everywhere to suppress vote and to push people to vote for a particular person. That's what Peter means by the old structure that he claims he is disrupting.
Well, Dr. Amadi, very well said. Very quickly before we go, what do you think will become of Doyin Okupe's political career now, apart from the 13 million naira hit he took as a fine instead of the 2-year jail term? Do you see that he has any grounds for an appeal of this conviction?
Well, his lawyers are planning to appeal, and the argument they are making is that it's not Doyin Okupe who ought to be convicted. It's the office of the senior special to the president or media. Well, it's a novel canvas, a novel issue to canvas the Court of Appeal. I think he has some merit, but I would not really I don't see that it's not a slam dunk. The court will not just buy it. He has options to get that conviction off his profile. But again, it's not a conviction of corruption, and it might be arguable that even if he fails at the Court of Appeal up to the Supreme Court, the big question is, can he still hold public office in Nigeria? My point would be yes, because most of the constitutional provisions forbidding any person who has been convicted of holding office talk about offenses that import corruption or immorality. It's arguable that a strict liability offense of conviction like this speaks rather to not to immorality or to corruption, but rather to failure. Just like traffic offense. If you do this, but they don't really count as offensive convictions on corruption or immorality that can debar somebody from running for office. So that would be the issue to fight in the future if he has further ambition to run for political office. But it's still a weight on his shoulder. He's going to fight hard to see if he can totally get this conviction quashed at the Court of Appeal. In the meantime, stepping down allows the big campaign to run free of that encumbrance.
Arise News analyst Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.